This is the Eversolo DMP A6. And today we're going to compare this streaming DAC to the Bluesound Node and even the WIIM Pro. It's going to be a lot of fun. So sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and let's talk about this very popular streaming DAC compared to some of its lower priced competition. The Eversolo DMP A6 comes in at $860. This has been a bit of a darling amongst the audiophile reviewing community. Why? Well, because it looks like it's built really well. Actually, it is built really well. It has an internal switching power supply. But the star of the show is the 6-inch display. Very nice display. Now, I don't have any other streaming DACs or streamers that have a display. WIIM, no display. Bluesound Node, no display. This is just like touchy controls and stuff. No album art, unless you draw it out with some crayons and then put it on there. But every time you switch tracks, you're gonna have to draw out another scene of album art. I didn't have a Bluesound Node on hand, so I reached out to my wonderful Patreon community, and Bob Fonseca, who has a great channel called the United States of Analog, had one of these laying around, so he sent it to me, along with some Sonic coupons. Thank you, Bob. I don't know if you meant to put these in the box or not, but I appreciate it, because I probably will use the BOGO hot dog one. He also sent me out some really cool stickers. I will link his channel in the description. If you're not subscribed, run on over to the United States of Analog. And it's powered by Bob Fonseca. Great guy. Love Bob. Thank you, Bob. Let's talk a little bit more about the Eversolo. I think the easiest way for me to talk about the Eversolo is talk about what it is. To me, I feel like this is a streamer built around a DAC. Now, you could say, well, all streamers are built around DACs. Well, not really, because the iFi Zen Stream has no DAC in it. However, the DMP A6 is using two Sabre, 9038 Q2M DAC chips, and then an XMOS sensor, a whole bunch of other stuff. Also has an an Android operating system in here. So, in theory, you can run apps on the Eversolo just like you would be able to run on a phone, except for this one, because this is an iPhone. So this is a streamer with a really powerful DAC, or this is a DAC with a really powerful streamer. Either way, you can't really separate the two, because this is not a modular component. So if you want to change out the DAC later on, you can't do it. However, the 9038 Q2M is a very well-respected, good-sounding DAC chip, and how they have it integrated within the Eversolo DMP A6, well, it sounds really good. Really, really good. At $860, though, it should sound really good, baby, because it's expensive, more expensive than most of the streamers. Well, all of the streamers that I play around with. This is the most expensive streamer that I've ever had in for review. If you want to read up more about the specifications on this product, we'll get into the operation of the product, but if you want more specs, go over to the website, check it out, because I'm not going to discuss the ins and outs of the specification of this product. I'll put a link in the description if you want to know more about the specs. Go check it out. But we don't listen to specs, right? We operate things and we listen with our ears and our hearts. So I'm not really going to talk about the specifications too much. But I am going to talk about what's on the back. On the back, it is jam-packed with a whole bunch of stuff. All right, over here, you have the analog output section, which is two XLR outputs, so you can run this thing balanced out, single-ended RCA output. Then you have two digital outputs. So if you want to bypass the internal DAC on this and really screw up the value proposition, you certainly can if you have a better DAC at home, or you like the sound of your DAC better than the internal one in the DMP A6. And right here you have your digital inputs. So this thing acts exactly like an external DAC. You have a USB input, USB-C, optical input right there, a coaxial input right here. Then you have some USB stuff. This is for like hard drives. And you have an HDMI output. Now, we're going to go ahead and talk about this right now. I think this is the biggest swing and a miss for the DMP A6. Why? Because if you look over here at the Bluesound node, they have an HDMI input. So this could have been somewhat of a digital preamp, somewhat of a digital brain, center of operations, traffic cop for your living room. So you could have connected your TV right to this with an HDMI eARC. However, you still can connect most TVs to the DMP A6 with an optical output. However, I think the HDMI eARC is kind of a move where a lot of audio components are going towards. The HDMI output on this is for DSD and for multi-channel music. Now, that's not something that I really get into very much. I suppose you could HDMI out of this into a receiver, but you could also just analog out of this into your receiver, or digital out of this into your receiver with the coaxial or the optical. With all that said, when I saw the HDMI connection on the back, I got super excited. But guess what? It's not an input, it's an output. And that's not something that I would really use. But it's there. I just wish it was an input. Because if it was an input, then you could run your TV into that. You could run a CD transport into this. You have a coaxial input for something else. This could have been darn near perfect for a living room 2-channel minimalist setup. Finally, over here you have a hardwired internet connection and then IEC power, master power toggle switch. Let's talk about how it works. When you first get into it, it can seem a little bit intimidating because there are a lot of options. For me, however, I mostly do my streaming from streaming services like Amazon Music, like Tidal. And I also have a NAS system. Most streamers have no problem picking up my NAS system when it's on the same network. And Eversolo was no different. Very easy to pick up and then view all of my music that I have on my NAS. This also has the ability to download apps. One of the biggest downloadable apps that I think people should probably be interested in is Apple Music. You can also do Deezer. You can also do Napster if you want to. So since this is an Android operating system, in essence it works a little bit like a phone where you can download different apps and use them on this streamer. However, strangely enough, on the website, it says that it works with Amazon Music natively, or at least it's in the section with Tidal and Qobuz. Guess what? Amazon Music was not installed on mine. And to my knowledge, I don't think you can install Amazon Music on this product right now, which is a huge disappointment for me because I use Amazon Music a lot. Amazon Music is probably, I think still, the most cost-effective way to get lossless, high-res, bit-perfect music if you are a Prime member. I think even if you're not a Prime member, it's still only $9.99. I paid $14.99 for a family plan. I get 5 or 6 different Amazon Music accounts. And if you only have one product that you're putting Amazon Music on, it's only like $6 or maybe even $5 a month. Now, I can use Amazon Music over AirPlay, but I don't like doing that because then you lose the bit perfect functionality of Amazon high-res music. Amazon Music also has Atmos music and a whole bunch of spatial audio stuff too. So the takeaway for me is I couldn't figure out a way to play Amazon Music natively on this device, which is a big disappointment because Bluesound, you can do that, and you can also do that with the very affordable WIIM Pro and WIIM Mini products. So you can use the installed apps, which is Tidal and Qobuz. I used Tidal. I also used Roon because this is a Roon-ready device. So this is my use case scenario. Roon, Tidal, through either Tidal Connect or the app within the UI of the DMP A6. And then I listen to some music from my NAS. And that's it. I didn't AirPlay to this, although I tried. I made sure that it worked, but I didn't really use AirPlay to actually listen to any of the music. I also used the optical output on my television to go into the Eversolo to see just how well it worked. It worked fine, but I'm not getting bit perfect playback when I'm going from my TV to the DMP A6 because I'm using an Apple TV, the apps on the Apple TV to play Tidal and Amazon Music and all that stuff. And if you're getting a product like the Eversolo, you're probably not going to be using it to play music from an Apple TV because you're not getting bit perfect. Anyway, there's a lot of different ways to use this product, but that's how I used it. Tidal, Tidal Connect, NAS, Rune. How does it sound? Well, it sounds great. The 9038 Q2M is a DAC chip that is used in a lot of different DACs. I have listened to a lot of DACs that have the 9038 Q2M chipset. Now, of course, not all 9038 Q2M DACs are going to sound the same because they may have different analog output stages. The XDA3, which is the new digital preamp from Emotiva, the differential one, has the same DAC chip inside. So out of curiosity, I ran this straight out of the Eversolo into the analog input of the XDA3 into the DR1 monoblocks out to the source point 8s from MoFi Electronics. Sounded awesome. Sounded very good. Dynamic, big, wide, detailed. Then I ran the optical output from the Eversolo into the optical input of the XDA3. And guess what? Sounded great. Sounded awesome. Lots of space, lots of detail. The sonic differences between the DACs wasn't really noticeable, which makes sense if they're using a similar analog output stage. The big difference for me is to be comparing different streamers. So, the Bluesound and the WIIM Mini, both of which have different DACs, or at least different DAC chips. In one way, though, this is like comparing turntables with different cartridges. You can't really do it because different carts have different sonic characteristics. Different DAC chips have different sonic characteristics. So when I'm painting with extremely broad strokes, the sonic differences between the Bluesound and the Eversolo are that the Bluesound is a little bit more laid back. It's not as detailed. It's not as airy. Does it mean it sounds bad? No, not at all. Some recordings sound actually a lot better on the Bluesound because it covers up a little bit more sins than the Eversolo does. The WIIM Pro is even a step below the Bluesound as far as instrument separation. Still sounds good. And in a pinch, most people aren't going to really be able to tell that huge of a difference. You can hear a difference though, pretty easily. However, if you have the WIIM Pro and you're using that as your streamer, you can easily buy a DAC out there that has the same DAC chipset. Now, there's no guarantee it's going to sound exactly the same as the DMP A6, but it is going to get better. Quite frankly, when I hooked up the J2, the AKM version, to the WIIM Pro and compared it to the DMP A6 from Eversolo, I thought the sound was actually better. I thought the combo between the WIIM Pro and the Shelly Labs J2 was more dynamic, more natural on the top, and more spacious. And that combo would come in around $400. Now, you're not getting a bunch of the functionality of the DMP A6, but if you're in this for pure sonics and you don't care about a screen, I think you can do better for less money with the WIIM Pro and the DMP A6. Actually, you get more functionality too, because with the WIIM Pro, you have an analog input. So at that point, the WIIM Pro becomes a true preamp. No analog input on the DMP A6. The Bluesound also has an analog input via a 3.5mm jack on the back. So all of these products could be right for you in whatever use case scenario you have. So on the WIIM Pro and on the Node, you can bring in an analog input. So if you have something like a phono stage or a turntable, you can hook that straight up to the WIIM Pro or the Bluesound Node. You cannot do that on the Eversolo DMP A6. And I think that's a big missed opportunity. If you were pushing me saying which one sounds the best, Eversolo. But that's also relative to what type of music you listen to. I listen to a ton of metal from the 80s and 90s, and some of that stuff is terribly recorded. So on the DMP A6, a lot of it's pretty harsh and not super dynamic. The other problem with the DMP A6 is there is no integrated EQ like there is on the WIIM Pro. So with a bad recording on the WIIM Pro, I can mess around with a 10-band EQ to get it sounding exactly like I want it to. DMP A6, no EQ. So what are my final thoughts? Pros and cons. Pro, great display. I think this is the reason why you would buy this product, because you can have album art, you can have an interactive display, you can put VU meters on here, which are pretty cool. However, the VU meters, when I had them on, always seemed like they were kind of maxed out. There's only a tiny bit of play on the top end, and I couldn't find a way to kind of decrease the sensitivity of the fake VU meters. So I think that's another missed opportunity, because when I have VU meters, I want to see them moving around, especially when they're fake. So Eversolo, do an update so where we can turn down the sensitivity so there's more throw, there's more play on the VU meter. Pro, beautiful display. It's awesome. It was so cool to sit across the room and see the different album art pop up on this. And I think once another company can come out with a display around the same price, this is a needed product and it fills a void, because Bluesound hasn't come out with a streamer that has a screen on it. But I think $860, while that's super expensive for a lot of people, and I totally get it, but right now the Eversolo is really the only game in town except for the FIO. Now I don't have that FIO, I can't remember what the model number is, but for $860 you're getting a screen. I hope Bluesound comes out with one that has an option with a screen under $1,000. Pro number 2, sounds great, and you're basically getting a DAC. So you can run a CD transport, which I did, get right into this. You can run your TV right into this. So if you're looking at this from a value play with a fully functioning DAC and a fully functioning streamer with a display, I think the price is justified. I think there is value here. Let's talk about some cons. HDMI output. I don't really get it. I do get it if you're into SACD or multi-channel or DSD or whatever it is. I can kind of understand it. However, the move is towards HDMI ARC input, not to HDMI output. For some people, that's going to be a useful feature. For most people, it is not. For most people, an HDMI eARC connection would be much more usable than an HDMI output. Another con. No Amazon Music natively. For me, I use Amazon Music the most. Now I use Tidal and I use Rune as well. But a lot of my viewers use Amazon Music. Bluesound does it. WIIM does it. I don't think there's really a reason why Eversolo can't do it, except for whatever platform that the Eversolo is based on. If you don't listen to Amazon Music, then this is not an issue for you at all. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention the lack of native Amazon Music capabilities. Sonically, I think it's good, but also I think it can be beat, at least for my preferences, with a WIIM Pro and a J2, which comes in at $400. No display though, so again, not an apples to apples comparison. So, is the Eversolo DMP A6 worth the hype? I think for certain use case scenarios, certainly. I think it's great. I think the album art is awesome. I think if you're using Rune, it's awesome. If you're using Tidal, it's awesome. If you're on a budget though, do not fret, because I think you can get better functionality and even better sonics through a combination of lower priced equipment. But you're losing the display. So I can't really sit here and say just buy this one because it sounds better, because sound is relative. It depends on what you have it hooked up to, and it depends on what features you value. I don't think the Eversolo is overpriced. I think it sounds brilliant. I think it operates brilliantly. I have a few head-scratching moments with some of the feature set on it, but if it gives you what you need, I don't think you're going to be disappointed in it. It is a brilliant product for some people. I don't think it's a brilliant product for all people, but for some people it is. So, if you want to support the channel, you can sign up for Amazon Music, Tidal, or Rune. Links in the description. Click sign up. There's a trial period. Even if you quit though, I get a couple of dollars. You can also use the links in the description. Some of those will be affiliate links, which means if you click and you buy, I do get a commission, but it doesn't cost you any more, so it's a great way to support the channel. You can also buy me a cup of coffee. Down at the bottom of the video, there's a thanks button. Click, put a little bit of money in the tip jar, but don't feel compelled to give me any money at all. And you can also sign up for my Patreon community. Patreon.com/cheapaudioman. Every Sunday night we have patron-only Zooms, patron-only Discord, patron-only Facebook group. It's a great community. Over 500 people getting together, talking about audio and other stuff. So don't binge watch anything on Netflix or Hulu. Binge listen, maybe through your new Eversolo DMP A6, and fill your soul with happiness. And with that, I'm Randy. I'm the Cheap Audio Man.